Hello, Mallards. It is Saturday, and if I leave in the middle of this vlog, it's because my washer is really unbalanced for some reason and tried to just completely leap off of the stone concrete step that it's on a little while ago, which was honestly kind of terrifying. So if I hear that sound again, I will be going. But what I'm going to talk about today is season 6 of Black Mirror, which I finally got a chance to watch with Amanda tonight. This evening, we consumed all 5 episodes of the 6th season, and I think that it might have my favorite episode of Black Mirror so far, and also possibly my least favorite episode of Black Mirror so far. Although I was looking at the other seasons and trying to figure out if there was an episode that I liked less. And I think maybe a couple of the ones that I don't really remember that well, I maybe liked less than this one. But overall, I still really enjoy the show. I think that Black Mirror is clever and enjoyable. I enjoy trying to guess the twists, and sometimes I get them and sometimes I don't. And my favorite episodes are the ones where I'm surprised. Although I enjoy basically everything. I think that the show is really, really quite good. Very, very well done, well designed, well created, well written. Like, Black Mirror is a top television show. So season 6 starts off with what I think is my new favorite episode of Black Mirror. And I feel like every season I get a new episode that I really, really like, although it doesn't always take over as my favorite. But this one, wow, it's so good. So it's called Joan is Awful. And it's really meta because it centers around this woman who is having kind of a, I don't know, not necessarily a rough day, an average day. And then she comes home and sits down with her current boyfriend, and they pull on their streaming service, which is called Streamberry. And it's very obviously just Netflix, but with an S instead of an N. And there's a show on there called Joan is Awful, in which Selma Hayek is playing this character named Joan, and she basically goes through the whole day that this woman, Joan, just went through. And so essentially there's a streaming show about her life, but it's making her more awful than she actually is in real life. And that sort of starts to ruin her life. Like, she loses her fiance, and things sort of build from there. And I'm gonna spoil this whole thing, but what I really liked about it was the whole meta aspect of it. I really enjoyed that it was really Netflix sort of picking on Netflix and everything they create, and that Joan had signed away her life rights in the end user agreement that she agreed to when she signed up for a Streamberry account, which will teach you, this is why you should share passwords with friends so that you don't give up your life rights. Somebody else did that instead. And then she gets roped in with Selma Hayek, who is only in the show because she gave away her likeness rights. And so they're essentially computer generated creating this content, which is fascinating. I feel like it's also a commentary on the whole AI of it all. And so essentially a quantum computer is creating this show. And it's sort of fun because it's this sort of endless rabbit hole situation almost. So in the show where Selma Hayek is playing Joan, she then also gets home and sees on her streaming service a show called Joan is Awful, where Cate Blanchett is playing Joan. And we don't know how deep that rabbit hole goes. But when you eventually get to the end of the show where they're trying to stop whatever happens, where actual Selma Hayek teams up with Joan because they're both upset about how they're being used, and they decide they want to take down Streamberry. And so they break in, and then when they get in, the Joan we've been following finds out that she's not actually Joan. She's Annie Murphy playing Joan in another higher up Joan's version of the show. And she's essentially part of this computer creation. And I loved it. I loved that twist. I thought that the way that the show had done everything was really, really good. Like, I super enjoyed the endless rabbit hole. It was a lot of fun stuff to play with. There were some very clever bits in there. And the ending, which I won't spoil the entire ending, is really satisfying and not particularly negative. Not that I have a problem with the negative endings, but I always think that it's interesting when Black Mirror can manage a sort of happy ending out of the twisted things that they're doing, because I think it sets a very different tone, and I always respect that, and it's really fun. And I really could have watched that particular episode for probably another 30 or 40 minutes. Like, it could have been a full 2-hour film, and I think I would have enjoyed it just as much. I loved the meta nature of it, and I loved the rabbit hole in and in and in and in and in and in and in. Like, I would have enjoyed seeing a little bit of Cate Blanchett playing Joan is Awful, and like, who plays her, who plays Joan in her world, and how that all sort of winds and changes and goes. And like, it was really, really, really interesting. And I really, really enjoyed it. Like, I had such a good time. And so I was really happy with that episode. And I'm gonna, I guess, mostly talk about that episode. We'll run through the other ones real quick. So the second episode is Loch Henry. I liked the twist in that episode. That episode was dark and also interesting, but a little bit different and less about technology and more about issues with humans, and how dark humans can be, which I also enjoy in Black Mirror. But it was interesting because I do feel like this season in general is a little bit more of a departure from the technology base that is often a part, and I had always felt was like a little more essential to Black Mirror, and maybe that's why there's some of these episodes I don't like as much. But I did like Loch Henry. I thought that the twists were fun, even if they were kind of predictable just from the way that they were setting the tone. And I liked how it ended. I thought that it was a very nice, bittersweet ending for that particular episode. Then we have Beyond the Sea, which I loved. Again, not nearly as much as Joan is Awful, but it's about astronauts who have robotic bodies back at home. And it is the exact kind of darkness that I've enjoyed in Black Mirror. So the astronauts are up in space, but they have robotic bodies at home that they can spend their time in, except that one of the characters, his family gets murdered and his robotic body is destroyed. And so he's understandably depressed. And the other astronaut who's up in space offers his own robotic body as a way for the guy to like cope and start to feel better. And then it takes a turn that I was pretty sure it was going to take. And it ends, spoilers again. So in the end, the guy actually, like the astronaut who lost his family, murders the other astronaut's family while in his robot body. And that was dark. Like, dark. And I kind of loved it. And now they're stuck in space together, where they've talked about the fact that this is a 2-man mission. So if they want to survive, like, they both have to be there. And it's really interesting, though, because neither of them have something to come home to. And so it ends with him sort of discovering that his family has been killed and kind of leaves off there. And it's interesting to think about, like, how is that going to play out? What are they going to do after that's over? Because they are stuck with each other. And I think that's an interesting way to look at stuff. And then we have episode 4, which was my least favorite of this season and maybe one of my least favorites ever. It's called Maisie Day. It is about paparazzi following around these famous people and like One paparazzi person is sort of starting to get a conscience, although she definitely loses that at the end because the money is too good. But then one of these people that they're following turns out to be a werewolf. I don't know. I felt a little lost at different parts in this one in particular, and it just wasn't what I expected. Is a little bit of a commentary on the human condition, but definitely wasn't very technology related, and just wasn't very interesting to me. It was fine. And then Demon 79, which was fun again. Also not very tech-based, but just a fun romp. Like, that episode in particular didn't feel as Black Mirror, but had some sort of darkness and sort of twisted kind of thing that I enjoyed. And I liked the twists and turns, versus with Maisie Day, I didn't particularly enjoy the twists. And also, I think it had a little bit to do, too, with the characters. Like, I just didn't feel as invested in those characters as I did with the Demon 79 characters. So overall, it was a fun season. I think it started off really, really strong, but it did have a fascinating lack of technology. Like, 3 out of the 5 episodes weren't tech-related at all. And I think that's interesting. So they were more about humans and humans' capacity for good or evil. And I wonder if they're stepping away from the technology or what's going on there. But I had fun, and I'll watch another season if it comes out, because I do like some darkness. Definitely. And now I'm going to enjoy some darkness in my room and go to sleep. I'll see you tomorrow.